Hello, my kangaroos. Welcome to Rue Likes to Review. I am Rue. Happy Halloween! This is not a review video, but a list video. In 2022, I did all old movies. This year, it's a mixture of old and new. For the new movies, not really popular movies are going to be in this list. However, they are still worth a watch. This video is a spoiler-free video. In no particular order, what to watch for the month of October and, of course, Halloween. 1. 1964, The Ghost of Sierra de Cobre. Premise: a terrified mother puts a phone in her crypt. When she dies, she calls her son from her crypt, haunting him. To get rid of his mother's ghost, Henry hires a paranormal investigator to help him. I really like the story of this movie, and also the ghost is terrifying in this movie. 2. 1958, The Revenge of Frankenstein. Premise: having escaped execution and assumed an alias, Baron Frankenstein transplants his deformed underling's brain into a perfect body. But the effectiveness of the process and the secret of his identity soon begin to unravel. Francis Matthews and Peter Cushing star in this movie, and they play off each other so well they make this movie fun to watch. 3. 1960, The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. Premise: Dr. Henry Jekyll experiments with scientific means of revealing the hidden dark side of a man and releases a murderer from within himself. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is played by Paul Macy, and a sort of a friend, Paul, played by Christopher Lee, which are great actors together in this movie. I have seen many versions of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and this one was very well done. Paul Macy does an excellent job playing both roles. 4. 1974, Horror Express. Premise: while traveling on the Trans-Siberian Express, an anthropologist and his rival must contain the threat posed by cargo that holds prehistoric ape, which is the host for a life form that is absorbing the minds of the passengers and crew. The dynamic duo of horror, for their time, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, in another movie together, which makes this movie fun to watch. One thing I want to say about the movie is the eyes. The eyes are so creepy in this movie. 5. 1971, I, Monster. Premise: in the 19th century, a psychologist researches a new drug, and then he tests this drug on himself, and he has dire consequences. The premise of this movie is sort of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but it does have Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing together again. 6. 1969, The Oblong Box. The Oblong Box is a Edgar Allan Poe short story. Premise: aristocrat Julian Markham keeps his disfigured brother locked in a tower of his house. However, his brother occasionally escapes and causes havoc around the town. This has Vincent Price and Christopher Lee. You can tell they had fun making this movie. 7. 1957, The Curse of Frankenstein. This movie happens in the past. While waiting for his own execution, Frankenstein tells the story how he created a creature and brought him to life. This has, of course, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, but also Paul Krempa, which was great to watch all three of them play in this movie. 8. 2019, The Unknown Visitor. Premise: A woman is experiencing terrifying encounters captured by her door camera. This movie isn't the best, but it's only 50 minutes on Tubi. It's worth a watch. It's funny in parts that it's not supposed to be. Pay attention to the background. This is definitely a B movie. 9. 2021 Scare Us. Horror anthology of 5 stories. I like how not only do we get to see the 5 stories, it's actually 6 because of how the stories start. The second story is my favorite because I thought it was the scariest. And there's also a twist ending at the end of this movie. 10. 2012 Cockneys vs. Zombies. Premise. Young people go rob a bank to help their granddad's retirement home that is being closed down. While robbing the bank, a zombie apocalypse happens. This movie is more fun to watch than scary. 11. 1980 Fog. Premise. An unearthly fog rolls into a small coastal town when they are celebrating 100 years after a mysterious ship sinks in its waters. This has Jamie Lee Curtis in it, and at first I didn't recognize her because she's so young in this movie. This movie is worth a watch at least once. It's not cheesy and the end is good. 12. 2019 The Lighthouse. Premise. 2 lighthouse keepers try to maintain their sanity while living on a remote New England island in the 1890s. This movie has William Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. This movie is also shot in black and white. This movie is very strange, scary at times, and straight up madness. 13. 1986 House. Premise. A troubled writer moves into a haunted house after inheriting it from his aunt. This movie is a classic haunted house, but the story is intriguing. It does have classic 80s ghosts and monsters. 14. 2015 Hell House LLC. Premise. 5 years after an unexplained event happens during a haunted hotel where 15 people died, a documentary crew travels back to the hotel to find out what really happened. I have to admit, found footage horror is one of my favorites, but so many are done so badly. With Hell House LLC was really well done, and it's scary. 15. 2018 Hell House LLC 2. The Abaddon Hotel. Premise. 8 years after the tragedy of Hell House LLC, an anonymous tip intrigues investigative journalist Jessica Fox is convinced that the key evidence is hidden in the hotel. Her team and a member who survived from the first movie go back to the hotel. In my own opinion, I think this movie is the scariest in its series. 16. 2019 Hell House LLC Lake of Fire. Premise. The Abaddon Hotel is once again open to the public. Russell Wynn takes his audience interactive show Insomnia to the hotel. In my own opinion, I would say this is the least scary out of the 3 movies, but you do need to watch the first 2 movies to understand the storyline in this movie. The tension in this movie is what makes this movie worth a watch. 17. 1968 The Devil Rides Out. Premise. Devil worshippers plan to convert 2 new victims. This movie is God versus the devil. The part with the protection circle was the best part of this movie. It was so fun to watch. 18. 2018. Camp Coldbrook. Premise. A paranormal team sets out to check out an abandoned summer camp where a mass murder has taken place decades previous. This is a decent found footage movie, but it's the twist what makes this movie. 19. 2020. Hashtag alive. Premise. The rapid spread of an unknown infection has left an entire city in chaos, but one survivor remains alive in isolation. This is his story. This movie is from South Korea and can be viewed on Netflix. In my opinion, foreign zombie movies are the best. I also love horror movies that happen in one location because they have to be creative enough to pull it off, and this movie does. Also, the zombies look great in this movie. 20. 1989. The Dead Pit. Premise. A renegade doctor is killed by another doctor and is entombed with his fiendish experiments in a mental hospital. 20 years later, an earthquake awakens the doctor and his subjects. Warning, there is nudity in this movie. The main character has amnesia. Usually I don't like horror movies that has to do with amnesia because I find it to be lazy horror. However, I wanted to watch 80s horror and decided to give this a watch. The movie doesn't disappoint. It's so 80s, but it is worth a watch. You know what I'm going to say. The eyes. The eyes are creepy in this movie. 21. 2022. Choose or Die. Premise. After firing up a lost 1980s survival horror game, a young coder unleashes a hidden curse that tears reality apart, forcing her to make terrifying decisions and face deadly consequences. This movie can be viewed on Netflix. This movie has scenes with old school video game graphics, which I was surprised about, and made this movie so much fun to watch. 22. 2021. The Ghosts of Borley Rectory. Premise. Harry Price investigates the ghosts of Borley Rectory during his stay there. This is for sure a B movie. There are parts that I laughed a lot, even though they are not supposed to be funny. Got to have at least one terribly funny horror movie in the mix. B movies are fun movies. 23. 2019. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Premise. On Halloween 1968, Stella and her two friends meet a mysterious drifter and uncover a sinister notebook of stories. This movie is a mixture of some horror, some unintentional funny, but this movie is well done. 24. 1981. My Bloody Valentine. Premise. A decades-old folk tale surrounding a deranged murderer killing those who celebrate Valentine's Day turns out to be true. This is a good slasher flick. Can you figure out who's behind the mask? I honestly was surprised who it was. This movie is fun to watch trying to figure out who that is. 25. 2021. Deadware. Premise. In 1999, two friends use a webcam for the first time. and stumble across a mysterious browser game that may be haunted. 26. 2011 War of the Dead. Premise: a platoon of American and Finnish soldiers is driven deep into a Russian forest where its captain discovers a terrifying secret. This movie really surprised me. The story is not the best, but I feel this movie went for the action, and it's very well done. It's Nazi zombies. The zombies look great, and the end is totally ultimate boss. 27. 2022 Deadstream. Premise: a disgraced internet personality attempts to win back his followers by live streaming one night alone in a haunted house. This is found footage, but it's really well done. Joseph Winter is not only the main actor, but he is also the writer. I enjoyed this movie. 28. 1988 Manic Cop. Premise: a killer dressed in a police uniform begins murdering innocent people on the streets of New York City. Do I need to say anything but Bruce Campbell? Oh, alright. Bruce Campbell in a cheesy 80s slasher flick. There is no more I need to say. 29. Premise: 1956 Earth versus the Flying Saucers. This movie has Joan Taylor in it, and she does a good job. This movie is just so fun to watch. It is cheesy, but that's what makes this movie. I love the saucers and, of course, the aliens. 30. 2016 The Void. Premise: shortly after delivering a patient to an understaffed hospital, a police officer experienced strange and violent occurrences, seemingly linked to a group of mysterious hooded figures. Warning: this movie has body horror. The story is what got me, and the end. I wish there was a sequel so I know what happens to the characters, but it's still a good movie. 31. 1979 Tourist Trap. Premise: a group of young friends stranded at a secluded roadside museum are stalked by a masked assailant who uses his telekinetic powers to control the attraction's mannequins. This movie does not take its time. Things start almost right away. I did jump on some of the jump scares. This is a good horror movie, and in conclusion, mannequins are scary. That's 31 horror movies that is worth a watch for the month of October and of course Halloween. Are you going to check any of these out or have seen any of them and like them? Let me know in the comments below. Happy Halloween! I will see you kangaroos in the next video.